can start streaming at some point, and perhaps, just perhaps, we will get online. I'm not holding my breath, but, oh, there's a little red line. There's a little possibility. I think we might be making the transition. I can't speak to the quality today, kids, but I can speak to the fact that we're now online. All right, good news. Okay, so that could be worse. Hi, Donna. Hey, Joseph. What's happening, folks? Is the audio okay? Last time there was a delay and it was maddening and all kinds of craziness. Hopefully it's a little better this time. I think so. I'm watching the audio jump at my voice. Okay, it should be all right. And pardon this is my little Trump microphone. It's built for his real hands, but it obviously doesn't fit me quite as well. But this is just for Chicago. You guys hopefully can hear me just through there. Thank you. What's happening? Audio seems good. It's a little soft, but pretty good. Okay, good to know. It's as loud as I can get it on there without it pinching or becoming a problem. So turn it up on your end, I think, would be the best bet. That's right. Thank you, Doris. Be sure to tune in to Doris before the show every week if you can. WCPT820.com is, of course, the website. You can put that link in your browser. You can put it in your phone, and then you can go to iHeart and look up the shows and play them through your car if you're out of range or you're traveling. That's what makes us mega worldwide, is that we can be everywhere. And not the least of which is tonight. I'm actually... and hey, Carl, I'm live on YouTube right now, so if you guys want to go to the chat and join us there, the stream's actually fairly happening right now. I rolled in tonight. I'm in Chengdu, China. That's right. The biggest little city you've never heard of. Probably right behind Chongqing is a giant city, which is a real city and is huge and has 2 golden Chrysler buildings joined by a bridge. I kid you not. I will post pictures on my Instagram in the very near future. We go there in about 3 days. But while I'm here, I'm actually going up into the mountains. And if you've been following on Instagram or on @HouseSparks at either Instagram or Twitter, you see that I've been traveling around China quite a bit. I'm shooting a show over here. So apologies if the audio is ever squirrely or what have you. But we're actually making the show happen. And considering the international aspect of the current news cycle, that's a good thing. You know, you certainly get a new perspective. Hey, Julie, we got both our moderators in. Hooray! That's right, and she's in Germany, so we are definitely mega worldwide throughout this. And even I believe Carl is down in, behind what used to be the orange curtain, which is what I was talking about at the beginning of the show. And I thank everybody for joining me on YouTube a little bit later. The news, there's a few things that have certainly stood out in this last election cycle. For me, I think the most egregious, of course, is the election of Brian Kemp as the governor of Georgia. A horrific act of voter suppression, the abject destruction by a man who was Secretary of State, presiding over his own election, turning Georgia effectively into a failed state, creating his own fiefdom within Georgia. There has got to be a law at some point wherein if a Secretary of State is running for governor, and if your state doesn't have a law like this might be one thing you might want to push for now, especially in places like Kansas and other places where you've now got a Democratic governor for the first time. Wow, that's amazing. But the fact that Brian Kemp as Secretary of State could oversee and disenfranchise millions, and I'm not exaggerating that number, millions of Georgian voters were not allowed to cast their vote, and then continually, mess with literally we had voting machines sent to districts that were highly African American, with no power cords. That level, this is why the existence of the Voting Rights Act was necessary still, even when the Supreme Court overturned it. One of the things that the House might attempt to do, and they are apparently going to investigate the vote tampering in these states. One of the things they might do, and I doubt it will get through the Senate, is pass a bill, at least for now, pass a bill that basically sets those points in law. Because, again, we've talked about this a little bit about what the limitations on a vote should be and can be within any particular state. And my feeling has always been that the balance between states' rights and federal rights should at least balance. One would think should at least work itself out. That if and when you decide that the state of Arkansas has made up its mind that it's going to decide its governor and its mayors by lottery, or by or if Pennsylvania decides that Punxsutawney Phil can decide how long the governor or state senators can. That's within the state confines of their offices. Okay, it's stupid, but knock yourself out. Within the context, you can make whatever constitution you want in any state if the voters are for it. But when it comes to federal offices that affect us all, the standard should be consistent, it should be reliable, and it should be standardized across all states. And that within a state, let's say you are a college student, it should be high-tech enough that if you're a college student living in South Carolina and you are from Ohio, and you are not transferring your residency to South Carolina, you are maintaining your residency, that you wouldn't even have to do it. Oh, do we switch over to the YouTube? I'm getting a blowback. I'm getting Lady B. Lady B, I have an echo. So, in the, it's hard to talk over myself. So, as you know, in creating this situation where it should be high tech enough where if you live in South Carolina but you are from Ohio and you are living in Ohio, that you shouldn't even have to mail your vote in. That there should be a federal system in place where you can vote for the federal offices in your state within the state that you're in, and because it is a standardized system, that vote will tally where you are registered to vote. Right? Simple things like that. These are simple things to shore up democracy and increase the technology that are there. So I'm not yelling at Lady B, Maureen. I'm asking for help. But Lady B is always on top of this. So when it comes to the Brian Kemp election in Georgia, I think if that is allowed to stand as a standard for any state in the country, it is incredibly dangerous as a precedent. And it is one of the first things that need be fixed. There is a boycott Georgia movement. It certainly, once Walking Dead finishes in the next year or so, there certainly will be a mass exodus of a rather giant production from that state. If other states were willing to go there, they may not now. They may end up going back to South Carolina as a right-to-work state, or they may find themselves, God forbid, what do you know, who knows, in Southern California and actually Los Angeles, where most of the people who are there, who work in the industry actually live. This requires a massive movement. Do I think it will happen? Not right away. It will be a slow roll, and it will have something. It will have to be something that the people of Georgia really react to over the next, I guess, 2 or 3 years leading up into whether or not this guy can run again, or if he's found guilty of an ethics violation by the House, if he can be censured. The rules are murky about that kind of stuff because of good old states' rights. We're going to talk about a few things. Obviously, the CIA now confirming that that the Saudi prince was behind the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, and big surprise. But of course, Trump is still running interference for them. They are saying that now that they were going to try to get the death penalty on 5 people who were involved in the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, and which I don't know how that makes you feel if you were one of those guys who was ordered to do that. Is that, or you might be in another one of those groups, one of those security groups that might get sent on one of these missions in the future. If that's what happens to your compatriots, how do you go on that mission again? I mean, that by the way, Act in our chat room just made a great point and a great idea. His idea is opt-out voting, which is if you don't show up, your votes automatically go to the party you are registered with. Show up to change, override, or vote for the nonpartisan offices and ballot measures. That's right. If you're a registered Democrat, you automatically vote a blue line. If you're a registered Republican, you automatically vote a red line. And the only thing that you actually have to do show up to do would be ballot measures, like whether your state issues a bond for education or fixing roads, or creating or denying rights, as they will somehow do. I like it. I think that, then it certainly makes it more meaningful, that you have to, as far as your registration goes. And if you're not party affiliated, you got to show up and just personally do it. But one of the ways you could, shorten the ability, the difficulty level, and certainly the lines outside of voting places would be to do that. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the House Parks Radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Now we are questioning, is Mike Pence loyal? Is Mike Pence the new Two-Face? Harvey Dent, can we trust him? We'll be back. Hi, Hal Vickery. Hi, everybody. Hi, Milkman Norm. Hi, Can't Stop Whining. Hey, likes are ultra low. Remember the thumbs up in the stream, guys. Helps promote awareness. So that's absolutely right. We started a little bit late. So, Lady B, are you hearing me? Are we rolling into break? Let me know. I think so, but I can't tell. I might have lost it just because of I figured, yeah, it'll be like that. I apologize. Like I said, it's amazing we can even hook up a little bit. Oh, there it is. Yeah. So holding strong. Thank you. Okay, we'll be back right after this. Dun, 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 dun. Hey, chat room. It's funny that we can always get fairly decent audio and video on here, but how can you explain sealed indictment? Yeah, sure. So when a prosecutor, especially in a RICO case, meaning the sort of mafia gangster related multiple source conspiracies, as they're working their way up the chain, to keep the boss from knowing that all of his people are being caught, in some cases turning on him and turning state's evidence, what they do is they indict them, because that's part of making a deal. You create an indictment saying, okay, we're indicting you for this crime and this crime and this crime, but not these others because you're cooperating. But you seal that indictment so that the person that they're giving you information on doesn't actually know that they're rolling on them. Does that make sense? Entered conversation with Jill Wine-Banks about the 25th Amendment. I mentioned that it appears that the VP has unilateral authority to stop the replacement of the president. She said she never noticed it before, but she thought the word meant I was right about that. Well, it's entirely possible that he may be the only person who can. I think he's the deciding vote, which is weird because he's the guy who gets the job, right? So that would be strange. Did Butina turn on the NRA? Well, I don't think so. I think she's holding out because she's being, she's being surrounded by, Russians they're visiting are in jail. So, and the problem is, especially, and this is one of the Manafort problems, is that they get to these people by going, yeah, you might die in prison, but we'll kill your kids while you're trapped in there. It's just a horrifying thing to think about when you're in bed with those kind of people. Bring me some gua sha facial tool from. Oh yeah, the little rolling things. Thank you so much, Mary Dixon and WWS. Thank you, and Hal Vickery. Thank you guys for the super chats. That's really awesome. Um, I'm surprised we got a little bit of a. I literally rolled into this hotel room like right before the show started, so we made it here. Yeah, the NRA turned on the USA. This is true. Let's see. We'll be coming back in just a minute or so. Uh, okay, 18 seconds. Excellent. Let's see. One of the biggest news is, well, whoops. Dun, 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 dun. Thanks, Julie. So, in line with the CIA concluding that the Saudi crown prince ordered the killing of Jamal Khashoggi, which is, by the way, surprising to no one, I always find it funny when an authoritarian dictator or someone with absolute power in a country claims that everything is them until they get busted for something, and then why would it be me? Trump does this all the time. This is a constant problem with Trump. Thank you, Amos. That's awesome. Trump does this thing where I fire people. You're fired. This whole you fired. I do the fired thing. People love it when I fire people, and yet he can't bring himself to fire people. He outsources it to John Kelly all the time. It's a pathetically weak attempt at actually making it happen. Oft times, were it not for them being around, these people wouldn't even get fired at all because he just does not have the guts to do it. And when it comes to someone like the Crown Prince, the idea that a rogue group of people within his cabinet would murder someone on his behalf without him knowing, without some like ridiculous, just lame attempt at plausible deniability, is absurd. It simply is. And so it's not surprising that this will come. I think what this speaks to is, again, Jared Kushner's relation to the Saudi prince, the money flowing through New York real estate from Saudi Arabia, how much of it ended up in the Trump and Kushner family buildings, has a lot to do with how this stuff is playing out. And in the middle of this, Trump is apparently decided, if we're talking about sort of the transparency about who's done what criminally, there was a slip this week that the DOJ is planning to indict or has already a sealed indictment on WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. And there's a lot of articles back and forth, and this is certainly a contentious and debatable issue. I for one have my personal feeling on this is that people like Chelsea Manning are heroes, and that Julian Assange steals the valor of those people and hides behind it for his own purposes. I do not think he is an honorable human being. I think he has a chip on his shoulder about the West somehow, and there was a recent New York Times report, and you can take that for whatever your issue is with the New York Times. But there was a New York Times did a study that most of the time when WikiLeaks released stuff, since 2015, it has benefited Russia, and there has certainly been a lack of using those tools to go after Russia, no matter how much Russia's involvement in Syria involves civilian deaths, no matter how much they mess around with Western democracies all over Europe and the United States, no matter the the inner workings of them operating behind Brexit and the rise of Trump. Somehow WikiLeaks doesn't mind those things. Just kind of lets them slide. Julian Assange even said, like, criticizing Russia was boring, doesn't everybody do it? And criticizing them is one thing, but releasing the secrets of one particular secret service, or in the United States case, the CIA, and not Russia's, conspicuously so, is the telling thing. Not so much the critique, but what was hacked and what is released. And in the case of Russia, it turns out that, and the charges that may come are not that, and this will be how they kind of get around, if anybody's, watched The Paper, or they saw, they've rewatched All the President's Men in the last few years, the idea that these papers received these stolen papers, or emails or files, or any of the above, from anonymous sources believing they need to get out. There is a difference between doing that and receiving these things, getting them from a source, and saying that they are newsworthy, redacting details that may put people in harm, but releasing as much as you can. And then, in the case of Julian Assange, what it seems like the case they are building is that not only did he release these documents, but he requested them, that he was directing the hacking, that he was operating with some of the hackers to get some of these documents. He was involved in the theft themselves. So not a whistleblower who saw something criminal and decided the world needs to know about it, but deciding that a particular world government that he has an issue with needs to be pantsed in front of the world, and whatever it takes to get incriminating stuff, they'll take it from any source, and they'll even seek to be active participants in the stealing of those things. And that's probably where the indictment is going to fall. When charges are were opened up, and you actually get to see them against Julian Assange, they will be for directing the hacking, probably a RICO-related kind of thing. And that, of course, gets to what we were talking about sealed indictments in the chat room. I was asked what's a sealed indictment, or what's the point? And oftentimes that has to do when you're coordinating a major operation wherein you are working your way up a chain of criminals or corrupt government officials, and you're trying to get the top guy. So you indict the lower ones in secret, so that the boss doesn't know the people under him have been indicted already. You can work out a deal based on that indictment with the people that you've actually arrested, and you can, like Papadopoulos and others, you can release them out. I did say pantsed, Robin M. Yes. So there isn't, there's a necessity to, until you're ready to spring, to catch Al Capone, you get his generals and his underlings, and you get them via sealed indictments most of the time. The other times you can also indict them before the actual arrest warrants are issued, and the like. So there's all sorts of uses for a sealed indictment. Most of the time, it's used to make sure that the boss doesn't know that people are rolling on him. And Edward in our chat room, how did the Ecuadorian embassy in London describe Julian as a stone in the shoe? That I did not hear that quote, but he certainly has been a relatively rotten house guest with them. He has overstayed his welcome. Allegedly, they were at one point trying to make him, curiously enough, the Ecuadorian ambassador to Russia, and they were going to set him up in Russia to do that. But in that process, apparently that failed. They were not able to get him. Were they to do that action, they weren't able to get him out of the embassy to Russia. They were having a real hard time sneaking him out of the place when it's under 24/7 surveillance by the British government, as it would be, since there's a guy in there evading a sexual assault warrant from, and then, of course, evading prosecution warrant now from Sweden, and the relationship that the British government has with Sweden. They would do this. So And again, it is curious. It is always curious to me, that who gets a pass within people's kind of okaying of sexual assault allegations. Assange has somehow managed, to avoid that in its entirety. It's kind of amazing. So, anyways, it looks as though the DOJ has started to move on indicting and eventually working to capture Julian Assange and bring him to the United States. There's been no real word on how this would be managed, except for at some point pressure on Ecuador to eventually just expel him forcibly, just walk him downstairs and shove him out the front door, and the British government turning him over to us. After possibly, by the way, going after him themselves. Yes, and Kurt the Realtor is asking, isn't Snowden in Russia? I'm wondering how long it's going to take for the USA to realize he's tied up in the hacking stuff. Well, Snowden, interestingly enough, was delivered to Russia partly by Glenn Greenwald's crowd and WikiLeaks. Curiously, they bounced him through China and ended up in Russia. And for some reason, is just stuck there. That he was unable to leave. Now, again, I sort of feel for Snowden and to some degree that he was trying to release some information that he thought was germane to the public and stuff. And I hold him at a higher regard, as I do Chelsea Manning, than I do Julian Assange. Because Julian Assange seems to feel like while Chelsea Manning went through a court proceeding, did her time in jail, and was released after serving her time, which was Julian Assange has been claiming all this time that he is a political prisoner held against his will when he is simply hiding in the Ecuadorian embassy. That is always, that this will all play out. But the important part of this is that the DOJ, even under Trump, is starting to look into Julian Assange and getting him back and actually charging him. Now, the curious thing about that, of course, was all of Trump's play about, I love WikiLeaks, more WikiLeaks, ooh, WikiLeaks, I like WikiLeaks. That in his support of WikiLeaks and loving, and I don't think he ever name-checked Julian Assange. I don't remember ever seeing that clip, but he certainly did talk about WikiLeaks as a brand when it helped him against the Democratic Party. But when you look at Trump's attitude towards WikiLeaks actually helping him in the election and now going after the guy, it's curious. The part that I think people are wondering about now is this somehow tied to the DOJ's operation with Mueller? That as Mueller outsources certain legal proceedings to the Southern District of New York and others, if during the course of the information that they have gathered through Roger Stone and others, and certainly Gates, who's probably the most, he's got the loosest lips that's sinking the most ships right now. More than likely, he has information that Assange was involved directly and spoke directly to the Trump campaign through Roger Stone or other mediaries, and if he did, and he directed hackers to get certain information, namely the Podesta emails and the DNC hack. If that is the case, that's the collusion. That's the whole ball game. Right? Now that's a coordination between, and with that, a coordination with Russia providing WikiLeaks with these emails. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, mega worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. You can tweet me at Hal Sparks, or you can join the chat room and talk to us there. I'll be back right after this. DOJ going after WikiLeaks could just be Trump telling Assange not to flip on him. It's entirely possible. He could, it's a selective prosecution is a classic tool of the authoritarian. It's just started to turn cold and it's been raining all day. I was in the desert in 24-degree temperatures yesterday and the day before on a camel and then by myself. Trump has a number of mental issues, dementia just being one of the many. I think you're not wrong. Let's see. Any crime Mueller's found that outside scope of his investigation is passed off to local districts because it's still a crime. That's right. And some of them may be within his purview and stuff that he can do, but he knows that if he passes all that information off and starts the prosecution going in another environment, at the very least it protects him. Excuse me for yawning. It's almost 2 o'clock in the morning here. Lady B, can you hear me? I'm just making sure I'm still connected. Okay, good. All right, cool. Feels like Trump is cornered and he's panicking, just like a concerned animal. I mean, he's always kind of behaved like that, so it's hard to say. And he's never dealt with ramifications, seriously in his life anyway. So it seems to be weird that he would start now. Just a bloviating maniac. So we will. I'd like to talk a little bit about the Pelosi issue as well. Let's see. Yeah. Cool. So we'll go back. Let's see. Cool. Your desert pics were amazing. Yeah, it was pretty amazing to be out there. If Mueller is able to connect WikiLeaks to Russia, hacking will be over. Yeah. Welcome back to the show. So it's almost 2 o'clock in the morning where I am, and I've been working all day, and I work tomorrow. And so if my thoughts tend to trail off, be forgiving, because I'm on the other side of the world. But it kind of, maybe it gives me a deeper understanding of where Trump's brain is right now. Just a little watery, a little less solid, a little less directed, unless he's had his 12 Diet Cokes and his Adderall. But one of the scariest parts for a lot of people right now, within the administration, is Trump seems to have an obsession with questioning whether Mike Pence is trustworthy, if he can trust him. That this is, there's something, apparently Trump is asking people almost at every lunch that it's become a fixation lately that Pence is somehow not, that he doesn't have his back. Now, it is not surprising, by the way, that Trump thinks this about anybody, because at some point or another, Trump thinks this about everybody. This is one of the interesting aspects of this whole news story, is that Trump himself has bouncing around inside his crude cranium the idea that anybody, with the exception of close family members, and it might simply boil down to just Ivanka, that everybody will eventually turn on him. When you're, and it speaks, it's sort of obvious, I think, in a lot of ways, if you look at how Trump behaves as a human being, that he would project that outward. That he's not loyal. He lives within his own head the illusion of loyalty, but at the same time, he's ready to bail on just about anybody at any time. So when it gets to Pence, there should be no surprise that Trump is paranoid about not just Mike Pence, but literally everyone in his cabinet. And if you look at how he has treated people over, he knows people until he doesn't know people. They're the best and most important people in the cabinet until he barely knew them and then didn't belong there in the first place. Everybody's expendable but him. And you can't have those thoughts bouncing around in your head and not eventually direct them and believe that they're bouncing back at you from other people's minds. You just simply cannot. Now, Billy in our chat room is saying Pence is a snake and will leave Trump hanging out there if he has a shot at the presidency. I agree. This is not to say that, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you. And I do think there's something to his worry about Mike Pence in particular. And to some degree, it was the same thing with Nikki Haley. I think she had to go because the idea is that she's got serious presidential prospects from a Republican standpoint. Now, the problem that she has is probably the same one that Sarah Palin had, which is huge. The Republicans have a woman problem in that they like them, they just won't vote for them. That, time and time again, they love, Sarah Palin, but she had a 80% likability in the Republican Party and a 10%, voter assurance from them. And it is not surprising that that's a kind of an ongoing concern. So, but just the very fact that she could have a chance of running against him or primarying him or simply running after him even. I think there's an ego thing with Trump that he's not going to even let the person who's going to run after him kind of exist. I think Trump would almost throw it to a Democrat if he made it through a second term in his own head. So that no Republican could say they were as good as him. There was just nobody could follow him. A Democrat had to win because there was no Republican as good as he is. And I wouldn't be surprised at that. So when Trump has been apparently asking, this is from New York Times, but there's also an article in the Washington Post. This is pretty consistent around the thing. Trump has repeated the question so many times whether Pence is trustworthy that he is alarmed some of his advisors. The president has not only openly suggested dropping Mike Pence from the ticket and picking another running mate in 2020, which happens with presidents and also becomes a rumor around presidents that several times. I've heard this in my lifetime. But the advisors say those kinds of questions usually indicate that he has grown irritated with someone. The answers Mr. Trump gets to his question have varied depending on whom he asks. And in the White House, most people he has talked to have assured the president that Mr. Pence has been a committed soldier, engaging in activities, which, by the way, I don't know what he's doing behind the scenes, but every time you see Mike Pence speak in public or even look at Donald Trump, he looks like a stalker. It's not even close. Mike Pence goes beyond the supportive vice president to nearly looking like a dejected ex staring through bushes. It's really odd. So much so that it either has to be real or it has to be a total show. And since no one really gets that high in office without having some level of Machiavellian scheming going on, I'm going to, at this point, go with total show. And they say, continuing, Pence is engaged in activities that Mr. Trump has eschewed, such as traveling to Hawaii to receive the remains of veterans from the Korean War, or visiting parts of the globe that Mr. Trump has avoided. But some Trump advisors, primarily outside the White House, have suggested to him that while Mike Pence remains loyal, he may have used up his utility. These advisors argue that Mr. Trump has forged his own relationship with evangelical voters, and that what he might benefit from more is a running mate who could help him with female voters who disapprove of him in large numbers. Others close to the president believe that asking about Pence's loyalty is a proxy for asking whether the vice president's chief of staff, Nick Ayers, is trustworthy. Mr. Trump has been considering making Mr. Ayers the White House chief of staff to replace John Kelly, the retired Marine general, a decision several White House officials say has been been made with the encouragement of his adult children, but the president has put off making the decision for now. I personally think that a lot of times when the kids start to gang up and give him too much advice, his immediate pushback is not to do it. Yeah, and I agree with EO. How much is that a utility? Like that he goes to Hawaii on your behalf and picks up the remains of the Korean soldiers, which you were so proud of doing. This is the interesting thing. It seems like, and this is really peculiar, unless we talk about like when he talks to a large crowd of soldiers on a ship, which is effectively just another version of his rallies, which he likes to do. But he does them in front of the military. He gets to wear the military jacket and kind of sell his idea of commander in chief. There's no point where Trump has gone one on one, person to person, and he hasn't been to a war zone. He blew off Veterans Day because apparently he had calls to make. He was dealing with affairs of state. This and that in and of itself is amazingly offensive. It's disgusting because there's nothing in that. There was no crucial moment that was happening on that particular day. There was no Gulf of Tonkin incident or Bay of Pigs incident or troop movements or the near miss between the American and Chinese ships was over 2 weeks ago now. There was nothing on Veterans Day. And by the way, he had time to tweet. He had time to watch Fox. He had time to watch at least, from the shows that he tweeted about, he had at least 3 hours of TV time. The trip to Arlington to lay the wreath and get back could have been done in 90 minutes. He would have had to skip, his DVR'd Judge Jeanine and Hannity episodes and watched them later. But we got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. The House Marks Radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk, live from Chengdu, China. That's right. Yeah. So we'll see about that. But what you notice on Facebook that Trump had marked himself safe from rain. Yeah. Authoritarian leaders always attract authoritarian followers, but also authoritarian leaders want to be part of authoritarian cabal. They are ruthless, even the followers. Yeah. Well, but the problem with an authoritarian system is you have to be on the inside or you're on the outside. It's like Captain Bryant in the original Blade Runner. If you're not cop, you're little people, and you know what happens to little people. Does he not know how to stream on his iPad? Hell yeah. Benedict and I'll make America sad again. Hal, do some jumping jacks. It will get your blood flowing and wake you up. Oh, thanks. I'm trying not to fade. I'm doing pretty good. It's just been a long day. Yeah, and I've been flying half the day too, so we're doing all right. I could hold it together. Part of it is just the stress of trying to make sure that the show actually continues and is going on. Yeah. Trump has the guys in the MAGA hats. DJ apparently has landed in California. I'm holding my breath. Right. Trump has just flown to Northern California to meet Brown and Newsom for the tour of the fire area. That ought to be fun. Oh my God. Yeah, the guy who can't stop lying. Like Trump says he would run towards a school shooter, but he won't. But when his hair blew into that weird, patchy, sloth from Goonies moment that he had on the steps, like ever since then he's been paranoid people are gonna see his skull. How much longer am I in China? 2 weeks. Till the 29th. Yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. That's the other thing. It's like we prepared the questions are done. We finished the questions. Yeah, he's not running out of schooner if it's raining. Yeah. I don't buy the whole he finished the questions at all. Oh, it's community post on YouTube. Not sure. I think that's within the realm of yeah, yeah. It's hard to say. Whoops, that popped out of there. There you go. I spoke with Jackie Schechner about you the other night. She's quite fond of you, as it turns out. Well, I'm fond of her. She's terrific. Hope Gavin gives him a hard time. I think they'll just embarrass him by being good at their jobs. Trump should shave his head, kingpin for president. Gavin's ex is dating John Jr. Yeah, well, it points to why that's Gavin's ex. If anybody finished the questions, it was too normal. Yeah, it was his lawyers. Yes, he didn't actually. I don't buy it either, and I don't even think they're done. I think that's a lie. I think first of all, he didn't fill them out. He says he did, and the lawyers checked them to make sure there wasn't any. He wouldn't get in trouble, and even kind of admitted as much. But I don't believe it. Yeah, if he pled the fifth, that's the ball game. His followers would freak out. I mean, half of them would go, "He's smart. That's what you should do." In the sovereign citizen crowd. But after that, no. Like the rest of them would go, "What a phony." And then imagine the clips. If you're pleading the fifth, you're guilty. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he will. I think you're right, Amos. I think we're coming back. Hold on one second. I gotta check something. Yeah. Okay. I gotta be able to power my iPad. Excellent. Excellent. There we go. Okay. Running out of battery power. So, President Trump said Saturday he would deliver his written responses to questions from Special Counsel Robert Mueller next week. They're all done, Trump told reporters on the South Lawn before leaving the White House to travel to California for a visit in the wake of deadly fires. Trump also said that he has not decided on whether to sit down for an interview with Mueller. Okay. And I don't know if you guys saw the clip of Eric Swalwell, Representative Swalwell, that I tweeted out. But he was on Fox News and just ate their lunch. It was glorious. And one of the things that that it kept saying was, "Look, he's going to submit him next week." And he's like, he had the question 6 months ago. Why does it take this guy so long to do his homework? And thank you, Sandra. His whole thing, like, we finished them, they're done, and my lawyers didn't do it, I did it. I don't need anybody to do them for me. They checked them over, and they absolutely. I don't buy this for 1 second. This idea that he's going to submit them next week. Next week, they're going to get them. It's just absurd. There is no way that Donald Trump has finished those questions and he's actually going to send them. I don't buy it. Not for a second. And the idea that he is somehow going to sell this bill of goods to a bunch of people, and by the way, wait for a week and a half for them to go, yeah, there haven't been any yet, and everybody around him will go, well, he's getting to it. Next week we wrote them, the lawyers need an extra day to look over them and make sure that they're copacetic, but blah blah. And they'll draft up, minor yes and no's to some of them, ignore others, and say I don't have to answer that, but not actually plead the fifth. And honestly, but his like selling this idea, like these are my ideas. I don't let anybody do it. I don't need lawyers. I know exactly how to answer. I know your game, Mueller. Look. Hey. I've signed. No. Listen. I've finished them. They're done. It's done. The check is in the mail. Okay. So the bankruptcy paperwork is in the mail. The idea that he has done is I no longer take anything. I mean, not that I deeply did in any way, but there were at least times when I was like, okay, he's going to do this, but he's going to screw up doing it. I don't even buy that he's going to do it now. Most of this, so the throughout this whole endeavor where he's been calling it a witch hunt and he's been saying it's, there's no collusion. He keeps throwing that one out again and again and again. It's such a belabored point, and it's so tired. And this idea that they haven't found anything even close to, when you've had dozens of indictments, people pleading guilty, especially to lying to federal authorities, lying to the FBI, specifically about their contacts with Russia. With Jeff Sessions, the idea that guy was able to be end up being the head of the DOJ, had to recuse himself from the Russian investigation from overseeing it, and then actually he gets let go, retires, resigns, is fired, all in the same breath, whoever you want to believe about his exit from that, but that he was able to go through that whole process without ever having to face the fact that he lied to Congress multiple times during his confirmation hearing, is the indicator to let you know that their response to all this is garbage. There's never going to be a point where Trump is going to answer those questions unless he is subpoenaed and answers them on video. I don't buy it. This is another one of those situations where when the Republicans release something, a memo that's supposed to have secret information when it's really just a series of opinions typed out over 4 pages. Where the Republican tax plan comes out and it's actually just a brochure, and 1 page in it is a cowboy on a horse. Like this is your modern Republican Party. Meanwhile, through all this, one of the things that does happen that is concerning about the Trump presidency is that with the help of the Mike Pences of the world, and with the help of the Republicans in the House and Senate, who have basically a wish list for certain voters that they have to check off or they'll lose their base entirely, that the Trump administration has decided to make it easier for employers to exclude birth control from their health coverage, which is, in the Affordable Care Act. Now, the debate about abortion can be had. I am obviously pro-choice because I believe a woman should have autonomy over her own body, and that, and until such time as rape and parental laws around rape are more stringent and protective. The idea that some crazy person could rape their way into some woman's life simply by, impregnating her, and then the state forces her to carry that baby to term, for example, is a horrifying prospect. And it creates abortions where there need be none because that gives that person an incentive to do that. Until those kind of things are handled, it's the debate about whether or not the legality of it is kind of an absurd one. And I think most people agree on standards for the length of time most of the time. There's a lot of bridges that can be built in this, but one of the areas that it seems very awkward and weird and very specific to an evangelical wing of Christianity, and certainly I suppose there's some room in there for hardcore Catholics as well, but is this war on contraception that they have. That this idea that the pill in particular, that by taking the pill, a woman has autonomy over her reproductive cycle, really digs at them in a very strange way. More so in some cases even than abortion does, that a woman can simply decide when fertility will be a part of her life and when it will not. And to me, it's a no-brainer. And few things can eliminate more abortions than not getting pregnant in the first place. I am always amazed at their inability to wrap their head around that. But in the case of this, the Trump administration is making it easier for employers to exclude birth control from health insurance benefits provided under the Affordable Care Act. And it has come up with a new justification saying that female employees, wait for it, can obtain contraceptives at family planning clinics for low-income people. Unless I suppose they're not low income, and that they, that the cutoff point is, it will be moderated. The irony is that they'll somehow go, that only counts if you're, if you make under $12 an hour, and then of course making sure that the minimum wage in the states that it applies to, they're all over 15, so they can basically knock it out of everybody's hands. But the idea that somehow women should not be allowed to get a comprehensive health care plan from their employer because the employer has a religious objection to that, to them having contraception. Now, again, every single one of these companies that have a religious objection to abortion, we can even put that aside for the moment. But the idea that they'd be against contraceptives is on par more less with the idea that, because they never become pregnant in the first place. It is sort of the moral equivalent of, on a biblical level, I suppose, spilling your seed upon the ground is the idea, which is biblically on par with divorce and eating shrimp and wearing two types of cloth on your body at the same time that aren't made of the same fabric. All those aspects, like none of them seek to stop those things. Nobody is saying, I guarantee that every single company that is seeking to deny women the right to get contraceptives as part of their normal healthcare policy, their employees wear a polycotton blend. I guarantee it. I guarantee that Hobby Lobby's shirts are a cotton rayon polyester mix. Guarantee it. That they're asked to wear khakis that are cotton, and that the shirts themselves are some sort of rayon or something along those lines, or a mix of things, which is biblically on the same par, according to Leviticus, as spilling your seed upon the ground, one would think. And so the selective cherry picking of which ones they will enforce, that in and of itself should be a simple no-go zone from a legal standpoint. Unless you are going to enforce all biblical law, you do not enforce any biblical law. You operate by the state's laws because you are an incorporated entity. You're not a person. Your company, and I think some companies should be allowed to operate within their religious beliefs if and when they only hire people who have those religious beliefs and only serve people who have those religious beliefs. But they still have to pay taxes. Because even those people who are driving to and from their place, even those people who are operating there, use traffic lights, use airplanes, use cars, use plumbing, every aspect of the nation that gets paid for in part or in whole by taxpayer money. Um, every business in this country benefits from that, which is my exact argument. Rand Paul thinks it's okay if a business wants to deny black people or Jews the right to come into their business because it's a personal sovereignty issue. But that black person, that Jew, cannot say, well, I don't want my taxes to pay for the street light outside that guy's place because that helps people find that place, and why am I funding that guy's place on a societal level if I can't even go in there? So this particular thing is, and the argument they make in the Times is that in turn could increase demand for clinic services which are already squeezed. The plan is one of several recent proposals that could affect access to birth control, such as requiring the physical separation of services at clinics and strict new rules about insurance payments. The health law generally requires employers to cover preventative health services, and the government says that those include contraceptives for women. Under final rules published this past week, by the way, the Republicans want to go back, never forget this, Republicans want to go back to the time when having been pregnant in the past constitutes a pre-existing condition. So, even if you decided to go through with your pregnancy, the Republicans still think that you should be financially punished for that. So there you go. Under final rules published this past week, employers can obtain an exemption if they object to some or all forms of contraception based on their, quote, sincerely held religious beliefs or moral convictions. The problem I have with that is, how do you test sincerity? How do we know it's just not posturing for a group of people within their business circle? Oh, we got to take a break. Wow, I went right past that one. We'll be back right after this. It's the House Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk, live from Chengdu, China. We'll be back right after this. Follow me on Twitter at House Sparks, and of course, join us in the chat room. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube show. We'll be back right after this. Yeah, Amos. He was Mike Pence was a right-wing radio talk show host before he was the governor of Indiana. I think he was fairly local. I don't know if he was really syndicated. I don't ever remember him being a figure on the national stage, but he certainly was. You could make a rather minimal living, I suppose, in Indiana. What's the movie, Hal? What movie are you referring to? I don't know. John F. had an interesting interview with Stuttering John the other day. Stuttering John said that after the phone punking he pulled off against Trump, where impersonated Mendez, he got a knock on the door from the Secret Service. The next thing, an audit from the IRS for $20,000 in back taxes. Yeah, of course. The Secret Service thing is not surprising. The audit is the scary part. That's the dangerous part. Is that it sick the IRS on people, which is not surprising at all. But the Secret Service, I think it's their duty to check people out. If they manage to effectively, that's kind of on the level of hacking your way into a government system when you can fraudulently get your way all the way up the chain. Trump stamps everybody in the back. How could he like Pence, right? I'm going to Petra to become Indiana Jones for Thanksgiving. That's very cool. Let's see. Gathering up the... I don't think Mike Pence is interested in starting a civil war. I think he's effectively a coward, and sort of a dismissive pacifist. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dick K. The curious thing for me over the next this next run, going into the end of the year, what lame duck stuff they will try to get through in the process. It looks like Lindsey Graham is going to be the head of the judiciary. He'll be the judiciary chairman, um, and I think most of us thought he was, he's jockeying to be the head of the DOJ. But this is the next best thing, and he gets to stay a senator, which I think he feels fairly secure in his job there. And this may just be a ploy over time to, gain Trump's favor, get as high as he can into a position where it's hard to knock him out of that position again, which brings us to the Nancy Pelosi issue. There has been a minor and rather pathetic flailing attempt to push back against the idea of Nancy Pelosi as the new speaker. Many of you know this, that I find it curious that when it comes to diversity and the voices of people of color and women, that there seems to be an odd exception when it comes to Democratic leadership. And the people who get to set that exception seem to be Republicans. By vilifying, strategically vilifying the women and minorities that have run the DNC, and Nancy Pelosi herself as speaker, by going through the act of vilifying these people, Democrats, in an attempt to show that they are not, devout followers like Trump's followers are, and that they can think for themselves, are willing to throw Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Donna Brazile, and certainly Nancy Pelosi, sort of to the dogs at the first sign of trouble, without looking at contextually the success that they had. And it's certainly, the coordination that Nancy Pelosi was doing behind the scenes, both raising money and awareness and pushing for Democratic candidates, had a lot to do with why the Blue Wave was successful in the House. Had there been, it's interesting that she catches hell nonstop from both Trump, the right wing, and a decent number of Democrats, a decent number of indecent Democrats, I suppose. But Chuck Schumer does not. That is the head of the Senate, where they did not gain seats, where they actually lost a couple. Schumer seems to be devoid of most critiques and attack. But Nancy Pelosi, on the other hand, will be defined for Democrats, it seems, or a big swath of them. Certainly not this one, and certainly not a lot of people in our chat room, I suppose. But I'm not speaking for everyone. That for whatever reason, because the Republicans have made her such a target, they're effectively saying, well, she's such a target, maybe it's best not to have her in there, which is acquiescing to exactly what they do. She was a very effective leader. The Affordable Care Act is not only in place as a law now, partly because of her leadership, but also it has been impervious on most fronts to most Republican attacks. They have tried again and again to vote it down. They have tried again and again to subvert aspects of it and kill the law, and they cannot. It continues to get more popular. People are getting real health insurance and healing because they are because the Affordable Care Act is available to them. Lives have been saved because of its existence. And Nancy Pelosi played a major part in making that happen. And in the case of, the sort of Democratic pushback against her, it is curious to me that in this, we are fine with maybe new women speakers, but if they're older, or they've been around, or they've actually, spent time in the trenches doing this stuff, so they are automatically suspect. And I take issue with that. I think Nancy Pelosi did a very tough job, and she did it very well. And um, Republicans like running against her, sure, but the problem is they have a hard time running against her legislative achievements, and that's more important. And so, insofar as her, and like I said, Tom Perez, who runs the DNC, is a Hispanic man who's run the DNC. Like this immediate kind of turning on people, because you know, if it's if it's not new, it's through attitude, is I think self-destructive. And I do find it very curious that all this vitriol gets thrown Nancy Pelosi's way, but Chuck Schumer seems to dodge it, and Nancy Pelosi is presiding over the biggest flip of blue seats in nearly 100 years. And Chuck Schumer lost 3 seats. It looks like now. I think if there should be a fight for a new minority leader in the Senate, that would be a worthwhile conversation to have. And there are a few people in there that would do a damn fine job. But this idea that somehow Nancy Pelosi isn't qualified after how capable she was, and then now presiding over this, that she, helping to make this happen, and then ending up kind of on the receiving end of such ire, I find very suspect. Hal Vickery in our chat is saying Thems do need some younger people in leadership. I agree to some degree, but I don't think age should ever be the standard. If they're young and they have new ideas, then you need people with new ideas that are effective communicators of those ideas. That doesn't mean that it'll be the youngest person who was voted in, though. It might be new blood that's in there, but they might be older than some other people. They might have more experience. So let's see. Yeah, it's no coincidence that Trump is railing against California during the fires, having those losses. He definitely, looking at Orange County, he wants to make them think that the leadership of California is not to be trusted. Unfortunate for him, Brown is not going to be governor going forward, and Gavin Newsom is. So you can't blame the guy who's coming in. We'll see. I mean, I guess he can. He will all the time. So there we go. And I think WW West in our chat room is correct. Also, I believe we got to take a break. But when we come back, I think she will be speaker. And I think this kind of ginned up attitude against her is much smaller. And made to look like a lot more noise by the media than it actually is. So we'll be back. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Oh, we do? Okay, cool. We'll get them after the break. Is that cool? Are we taking a break? Yeah, cool. Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully, I'll be able to hear them. Fingers crossed. We'll see. That's right. That's right, Carl. We learned all about that, in the, back when, Dems claimed them in the first place. And there was some fear that they were going to make. Oops. Coming back? Oh, okay. It happens. It's okay. I have plenty to talk about, and we're nearing the end anyway, so I'll manage. Yeah, I agree, Cap. You can't stop lying, right? You missing Amos? It was all about 5 minutes. I think you're right, darn tootin' about Susan Collins. You guys are adorable. Let's see and get this whole thing coming up. 1 second. We'll be back in a minute. Where is that? Oh, yeah, it was WAPO, I think. Mm-hmm. Let's see, we're coming back in a minute. Great. Okay. Coming back, I think. Thank you, Lady B. And by the way, we love you, Lady B. Just big hugs all around. Everybody in the chat room um, can send their love. I'm sure you'll see it in there as they do. But we adore you as always. Um, so there was there will be over the next 3 months a bunch of flailing from Trump back and forth as he deals with the prospect of the swearing in of the new Congress that will hold him accountable starting in January. That his more than likely his taxes will be their New Year's resolution, getting those in one form or another released to the public. Um, that's just a fait accompli at this point, and I think part of his frustration is coming from that. The other is that they will be able to continually investigate both his emoluments cheats, which I think do not get nearly enough attention because the man is that his properties are only afloat simply because he has no he has the CIA paying retail for everything. There's not enough money in this, in any of these properties to keep them afloat. He had, now that he's president, he made the Mar-a-Lago entry fee double, and raise the rates, and then charges all government entities who have to follow him around full price for every minute they set foot on the property. Yeah, I wonder if like April 15th will be the tax day that they release his taxes. Like, hey, America, on the day that you're giving us your taxes, we're going to give you Donald Trump's taxes, or maybe a couple of days before. My problem is, I think if they did that right before right before April 15th, there'd be a bunch of people who were like, oh, he didn't pay taxes, I'm not going to pay any. If he's getting away with it, why should I bother? And certainly a lot of Republicans, we look at how they look at his philandering, how they look at his attitudes and his physical attacks on women, and certainly in how he runs his businesses, that a lot of these people are jealous of him. The evangelicals are very jealous of him. They wish they could get away with that as well. There's certainly a lot of his followers who go, man, if I could have that life, that'd be sweet. I'd be on my third wife too. Um, so, but the question will be, as we move forward, is the Mueller investigation. Jeff Flake has said this week, and we'll see. I mean, nobody nobody hold your breath on whether Jeff Flake is telling the truth, but Jeff Flake is saying that he will not vote on any judiciary, vote through any judges on the Judiciary Committee until the Protect Mueller bill gets to the floor of the Senate, which is, if he holds to it, terrific, and he has no reason not to. Personally, I think the Senate will probably, just wait him out till he's gone and then go ahead and vote through the people that they want. They've got enough judges in there already. But the big, question is, are these sealed indictments, these secret litigations going through courts about Mueller actually tightening a noose on Donald Trump's business dealings and his family's business dealings and his collusion with Russia? Apparently, Special Counsel Robert Mueller may have already subpoenaed President Donald Trump to compel testimony about collusion with Russia and obstruction of justice, a top legal expert explained on MSNBC on Saturday. Nelson Cunningham served as a general counsel to the Senate Judiciary Committee and as a federal prosecutor in the Southern District of New York. He said, there is some sealed litigation in the D.C. courts that's bounced back from the district court to the Court of Appeals, back to district court, and back to the Court of Appeals in rapid-fire fashion. The action was filed on August 16th. If you'll remember, Rudy Giuliani said on August 15th, we're almost done with our opposition to a subpoena motion. The very next day, this mystery litigation began. Only one judge has recused himself. From what we can tell from the public records, from consideration on the case, and that's how the judge in that Manafort-Trump, that's how one judge that Donald Trump appointed to this court litigated. You put the pieces together, and it could well be the president who is litigating with Robert Mueller over a piece of secret litigation, perhaps a subpoena that Mueller has given to Trump, in which his lawyers are fighting. It certainly would be a good way for him to use the period before the midterms to make significant progress in the case, he added. All this noise about the midterms, both wins and losses, give Trump an opportunity, like with this weird change in rules about birth control, to kind of do behind-the-scenes governance stuff that protects him or gives him a boost from his base. And you'll often find that when he does these giant flailing tweet storms, they are often to cover the fact that he's got some bad news coming and or he's hiding a piece of bad news he's made up himself. Elements that he is actually, problems of his own making. So, needless to say, over the next few months, there is a theory. Sam Nunberg, who is he's sort of like, what's Sam Nunberg? Sam Nunberg is like the Oliver Hardy to Carter Page's Stan. There's another fine mess you've gotten us into. The two of them together are just kind of magic. But apparently, according to former Trump campaign advisor Sam Nunberg, he predicted that during Saturday morning appearance on Up with David Gura on MSNBC that Trump would be the third United States president to be impeached. In 1868, Andrew Johnson was impeached. By 130 years later, President Bill Clinton was impeached. And then both were acquitted after trial in the U.S. Senate. President Richard Nixon faced impeachment, but chose to become the only president to resign from office. Guru asked Nunberg about Trump's claim that he had personally written responses to Special Counsel Robert Mueller. He said, I also think that he probably, just an opinion of mine, would not have actually answered the questions if Republicans had kept the House, Nunberg suggested. Nunberg revealed in March that he was subpoenaed by the special counsel. I remember, as Rudy Giuliani said, this is about articles of impeachment. The fight about him getting impeached. I happen to believe he will be impeached. He's not going to be removed from office, but I think at the end of the day, he's going to be impeached. I do think that process, especially in the House, is a very strong possibility now. But I do think it will be my theory is June of next year. That the process really starts to impeach him. And indictments coming, after the first year. Let's say Mueller finishes, technically speaking, in late February, early March. then the House takes the ball and says, based on these indictments, we're going to impeach the president. We will. It will be a trial that will be as drawn out and embarrassing during the beginning of 2019 into 2020 as possible to kind of hamstring the idea that he's going to run for president again, maybe even pushing him to choose to resign because of ego, which many people, myself included, have actually floated as a possibility, because Trump himself may not allow himself to be impeached. He may simply take pull a "you can't fire me, I quit." So there's a lot of potential there, that for Nunberg to be actually correct about this. But the baseline will be, effectively, it's all in Trump's lap at this point. Like I said, I don't believe he answered the question, and I don't believe those questions are ever going to show up on Mueller's desk. I think if they are, it will result in a secondary subpoena that will actually cause people to the Mueller will send out saying this is incomplete and we need more answers. And Mark Lamont says he won't resign. In our chat room, says he won't resign. That would mean he was wrong. I see where you're coming from, but I also think that there's a very strong chance that he could resign as just a screw all you guys, I'm better than this, and I'm just going to go show you what a great businessman I am, and he'll just cash out. Because the benefit of the Trump presidency for him only comes after all the information that he gets as part of his briefs, the stuff that his sons now know about, that his son-in-law knows about, that his daughter knows about, that affect basically how U.S. policy will be dictated in places all over the world over the next 10, 15, or 20 years. For a real estate mogul, that is gold in his hand. So there's a very, very, very strong chance that he would just cash out of the presidency. He would go, "Yeah, I'm resigning. I don't need you guys. My followers know that I'm right, and this it's just for losers." Nothing would surprise me coming out of his mouth at this point. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. Mm-hmm. If Trump resigns, he loses executive privilege against criminal indictment. He knows that. Yeah, but I also think he believes that that he's somehow protected from it. Once he's a citizen, not president, he will have dozens of felonies to fight. I agree with that. Yes, there will be an after show. It'll be very lethargic and perhaps a little bit loopy, but I'm glad to do it because I love you guys and I'm glad it's actually working. The fact that I was able to even start the show relatively on time amazes even me. The end game is likely to be horrifying for Trump. There's a strong argument for presidential pardon for Trump on compassionate grounds due to his age and compromised cognitive capacity. Yeah, it's one of those things. Like, he's got to plead that he's a mess. I just don't see his ego letting him do it. That's one of the weird things. Thank you, Carl. Question: think Mike Pence would pull a Gerald Ford? Well, I mean, I think he wants to be president. Sure. My thing with Mike Pence is, though, is I just don't. He's not as electable as Trump. He's just not. Even though he brought the evangelical vote to Trump again, I think they're right that Trump, has that vote now on its own, and that Pence himself is just seen as a weenie. I think all of his sycophantic staring, it just comes across as weak. Pence will pardon Trump just like Ford and Nixon. I think that's true. It wouldn't be HSRPM without some tech issues. I'm referring to Ford pardoning Nixon. Right. CSL, I know it was Wisconsin. Thanks, snow and plowing our own lot. What a plan. Welcome to the Pence Motel. I think we're coming back. We should be in a minute or so. Yeah. Thank you. coming back. I just got back from Tanzania, and I want to go back. So just huh. Oh, absolutely, Brad. Thank you. Yeah, I agree, King David Lane. Pence is too low energy, right? That's right. And and in all this, just watching this kind of stuff play out, there's some, unfortunately, this week's happy ending isn't quite that happy. It's an ongoing thing. The California fires are continuing to burn. There's over 1,000 people said to be missing, and 71 dead at the latest number I saw. Um, I personally believe, like the last one, this is going to trace back to human actions, specifically arson. Um, the you know there are indigenous plants in California that only germinate once they've been through a fire. That should give you some indication that fires of some magnitude are to be expected, and they will continue to be, um, as and as we look at climate change affecting things, drying places out, and then mudslides following because the fire seasons in California are always followed by rain. Nature knows what it's doing. It's just we've messed with the weather so much because we have clogged the air with garbage, and changed the heat level in the upper atmosphere through our actions. That it basically the 1-2 punch of burn and rain, that actually the rains put out the burn and could allow the plants to germinate and grow, that had been happening for millennia, if not billions of years, who's to say, has turned it into a situation where we've spread the time between the fire and the rain out by poisoning the atmosphere. Now, when it comes to climate change, there are two things that always strike me as peculiar with the Republican Party. One is there are the evangelical ones who just believe that God lives in the sky, and therefore the sky can never be wrong, and therefore there is no climate change. God will correct it. Either if they're some sort of orthodoxy, if they believe that when man is right again, kind of a mild version of Noah's Ark, but with heat and stuff, um, or they believe that God will just permanently keep the sky clear and fix it all the time because that's his domain. That idea, um, which is superstitious, crazy pants. But let's understand that that's actually a position. Let's call it position A. Position B in it is that climate change is happening, but it's a naturally occurring thing that happens in cycles, and we're just headed into 1,000 years of that expected cycle, or 500 years, or 100 years, or 20 days. They seem to be very flexible with that number. But the idea is that it's for a long time. That and that no matter that it's about our you know the diurnal rotation of the Earth on its axis and its movement around the sun, and what's entailed in that, we're getting a little bit closer to the sun. That's what's heating the Earth up, not that we've clogged the air with chlorofluorocarbons and greenhouse gases. And so my issue with that one is they believe it's natural. It's just happening naturally. It has nothing to do with our actions. So stopping burning coal and fuel and all that won't change anything. It's just natural. So why break people with a carbon tax who are trying to invent stuff and trying to make money when it's not going to change the outcome, because it's like hitting an iceberg. The iceberg is just coming. And my problem with that is, then why aren't you fixing coastal cities? Why are you not saying, look, we didn't cause this, but it's happening to the Earth, and that's why we need a Marshall Plan level infrastructure bill to protect cities through no fault of their own that are suddenly going to be, like the streets of Venice fairly soon. That's, that if you just believe that it's a natural cycle, then why aren't you trying to save people from the natural cycle, right? That one always puzzled me. The other is one of the outreach points, and I think it's important for us to always remember this whenever you run into a climate denier, because even climate deniers understand pollution as a concept. Even climate deniers recognize that there is a point in where nobody wants to stand. You understand that if you're in a car with the engine running in a closed garage, you're going to die because the fumes are toxic, and the volume of those toxic fumes that you find in places, like LA had really bad smog for the longest time. Certainly New York had it. Over here in Chengdu and in the rest of China, it's certainly something they're dealing with. Very difficult. And so they understand toxicity coming from tailpipes. It's not, doesn't require rocket science or physics or an understanding of, even weather patterns or the effect of petrochemicals and the gases that they release into the atmosphere over time. All you got to know is that you can see that air you can see is not necessarily good, and air that comes out of a tailpipe that's gray and black and comes out in puffs, probably not that good for your lungs most of the time, right? And so they understand, well, they may not believe in climate change, they believe in pollution. They understand pollution. And pollution sends 100,000 people to the hospital, most of them children, to the hospital every single year. And if you view yourself as a Christian, there's the simple act of protecting the environment from too much pollution is an act of saving lives. Whether you believe it's going to warm the planet or not, it's damn sure it's going to choke you when it's right next to your face. Nobody who says, I don't believe in climate change, would sit next to a tailpipe at a cookout. Just keep it running. I'm a little cold. The carburetor, the muffler's a little warm, so that helps. So for me, that one's always been the big hang up. But that's the sort of B position. A position being that God lives in the sky and will always fix it. B position is that scientifically the Earth is warming, but it's not us. It's something natural that occurs. And sort of the C one is the pretty version of either one of those. But the point I'm trying to make is sometimes conversation you're barking up the wrong tree when you're trying to express the importance of understanding climate change to certain people, but you can reach them based on the pollution argument. They can understand that. They can also understand the argument that it's a naturally occurring thing. If they're selling you that, then the pushback is always, then why aren't you doing something to mitigate the naturally occurring problem? Why in the world are you not working to protect, places like New Orleans, places like Miami, that are going to be at the effect of major flooding, where there's going to be, basically 2 feet of stagnant water over the entire city, a mosquito's playground. And with the Zika virus and with malaria and everything else, like, that becomes extraordinarily crucial, to handle that element of it. And there's many states that, and cities, big ones, that have dealt with constant environmental factors that are on the same level as these. Much like I believe there's 6 pumps in New York City that keep seawater out of the subway in New York that have to be running all the time. And if they ever lose one goes down, the place will flood, and everybody's screwed. That level of technology has been around for a very long time, simply to create that thing. So a similar movement on a governmental state level and on a federal level would, I think, be worthwhile. That being said, if there's any indication about how Republicans will handle, climate threats, whether they perceive climate change or not, whether they are aware of the dangers of pollution or not, the idea that they understand that a tornado or something has passed through an area that's something they can grasp as a concept. And if you look at how states like in the past, states like Kansas, Missouri, and other stuff who've been run by Republican governors, they're dealing with the constant idea that they have every year they're going to have tornadoes, and yet there's really no plan. LA has a similar situation, when it comes to the fires. That there is certainly an expectation that you're going to have we have a fire season. We know it's coming. And beyond, Trump's idea that we should just cut down trees, which I think is just kind of him, like he's got a lumber buddy who's like, oh man, we should use this as an example of why we should cull forests. Building barriers, like technology wherein, that certain fires get started in certain areas or can go one direction or another. So to protect heavily populated areas, you effectively build breakwaters against break fires, I guess, fire breaks, that will slow its approach and allow you to get ahead of it. Access roads, distances that make it harder for embers to jump across that. So there you go. Anyways, we're done with the show. Thank you guys for joining me today. Thank you, Lady B. Big love to you. Thank you, everybody at WCPT, for helping me put on the show while I'm out and about throughout China. Stick around on YouTube for our after show, and we'll see you next week. It's the House Parks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. Have a great Thanksgiving, everybody. Thank you, Lady B. Bye. Thank you. Big hug. Bye. Bye. Bye, Lady B. Okay, I think I lost her. Okay. Awesome. All right, and I'm hanging this part of it up. Taking that guy out. There you go. Now I don't need headphones. Julie would be so proud. Now I'm not so tired because I don't have to focus on 5 things at once. Hal, we don't mind if you go to sleep. Yeah, I'll just pass out right here. It's been a pretty amazing time here in China, I have to say. Can you guys hear me okay still? I just want to make sure. Because like your bit rate is getting constrained. It might be, although when I shut down these other apps, it might help immensely. So hopefully, since I don't have to do this, okay. I turned off the other devices, so hopefully that helps. There we go. I'll just unplug that, and I'm not sharing, anything. OMAD's pretty good while I'm here. I had to order protein powder through Taobao, which is like their version of eBay. Let you sleep like usual. That's not creepy or anything. Video bitrate is very low. Sorry. Hopefully it'll catch up in a minute. I had to order protein powder so that I could supplement it, so that I could get enough calories. It's like XO or Proxy. See, I think that's the, Kurt, I think that's the app doesn't always take the microphone cable in, because I have that little microphone I had. So a microphone cable with a splitter out for headphones, and you're supposed to be able to stick that thing in there, and then a mic and the headphones go on the same jack. And for some reason that app just does not want to register that there's a mic jack attached, even when there is. It's a little maddening, because sometimes that happens when I'm using the other little iPod Touch, and I'm like, it just sounds like a speakerphone, and I don't get it. So anyways, I could do this in my sleep. I have, basically. Alibaba is much bigger than eBay. Yeah, but it's also not even on the kind of quantum realm as eBay. eBay's way more personal, and Alibaba is just a giant distribution network. It's like if every material supplier in the world was on eBay. Carrie Blake along with you to go check for bedbugs. No, but I need to get one of those little scan things, the blue ones that kill them. That would be a good idea. one meal a day in China. So yes, so I do. Alibaba is kind of their Amazon, but it's also, like I said, Taobao is pretty close. Taobao, you deliver stuff. Here they also, people order stuff via WeChat and have it dropped off, which is very strange. Did you get that adorable mic when you left your shirt as you the dryer drilling? Yes. No, that's my, I got this for Politicon. I was interviewing people, saying this was a life-size Trump microphone. It fits his hands. And I was walking around interviewing people, like right-wingers with it. It's pretty funny. I'll put the footage up when I get back to the States. It's all trapped on my iPod Touch at the house there. It froze because I had too much. Baidu is their Google. Yep, pretty close. What is a typical OMAD for you while you're there? It changes all the time. It has to. And I'm always reticent to to talk about what I do and don't eat during my meal because it should be different for everybody. Not everybody can be vegan. I truly believe that. I think partly I would blame veganism, truthfully, for Steve Jobs' death because I don't think his diet was best for his body, and I think it wore him out over time. And you can be a wonderful vegan and vegetarian. You can be a crap vegan or vegetarian. You can be a great or a bad meat eater. And so the important thing is the timing of it. If you can space the time out. And so if you saw like I've been doing the one meal a day. My meal today was incredibly small. So it'll probably be necessary for me to do normal intermittent fasting tomorrow just so I have enough calories in my system. Because I had a dinner meeting during a layover on a plane. I literally drove into Lanzhou with two of our people from the show, from our outreach production arm of the show, to talk to the tourism minister and the propaganda minister for one of the areas that we want to film. And you have to get permission from them. And so I went and had dinner with them and all that. But I only got to eat maybe, one course before I had to get, back to the airport. So, why are you fasting? There's a couple of reasons. One is I'm for health, certainly. I find it incredibly effective for, weight maintenance. I've part of my Project 50 thing is trying to get the best physique of my life. And so, yeah, and please tell me if I look too skinny ever, but I'm pretty much maintaining. Let's see. There was a video posted today about how not all bodies are right for the fasting regimen. Yeah, there's a video posted about almost everything. So you got to take it. Do I do 18.6 when you do IF? That's what I'm doing. Working great. My window just opened a few minutes ago, and I'm going to go as long as possible today. Yeah, no, I do. Right now, I'm doing one meal a day. So I'm doing all my food in basically a 90 minutes to 2 hour window. And Summer and I these days are not fully vegan. We are omnivores, but we 80-20 vegan. 80% of the time we are vegan and vegetarian, and obviously because of Camden, I fluctuate with lacto-ovo, vegetarian, that kind of thing. He's not skinny; it's just a big head. That's funny. No, but I've been able to, it's been good. I've been putting on a lot of muscle. It's worked, and I feel great. This is the weird thing. So the strangest thing about the OMAD diet, the one meal a day thing, is I don't get that flag in energy. Now, I've literally been awake all day, and I ate a little while ago, but I didn't eat very much, obviously, and I don't work tomorrow. We've got it tomorrow because it was a travel day today. We have a day off, so I'll get to sleep in a little bit, which is great. But for whatever reason, I guess, when you have those 3 meals or whatever, your blood sugar fluctuates expecting the meal, and mine just doesn't. And it's been so consistent throughout. And I have to say, like, my cognitive ability has been very high. I'm having to talk and produce and host in 2 languages. It's a tall order. And I've been doing it all the while doing 1 meal a day. Yeah. Now, excuse me while I order a nice 32-ounce prime rib. You should if that's your thing, you should look into the carnivore diet, because a lot of people are having a lot of effective results from that. Our meals used to be such that meat was sort of a side dish. Yes, that's true. But our meals also used to have a lot of healthy fats in them, and we started eating low fat and low salt, and that's what started killing us. Only eat fruit in the morning. Let's see. Fruit hates me. YouTube just popped me with an ad with. Oh, sorry. Meatitarian. Yeah. I would be feed me Seymour Holly, right? I can't. It's hard to describe. Not quite vegan, vegetarian, but the fact that I heard pound for pound grass-fed beef is more environmentally healthy than any plant-based food. Yeah, it can be. Yeah. You should videotape yourself eating out and send it to CNN on Spec to replace Anthony Bourdain's parts unknown. Well, there's been some talk about us spreading this show out, so it's entirely possible. I'm on keto 90% of the time. Yeah. Or I should say my gut hates fruit. It often does. I mean, there's that big talk about, plants having anti-nutrients in them because ants don't want to get eaten, or plants don't even want to get eaten either. Fitness pizza in my mouth. And most people in the avoiding of fat and the avoiding of salt eat so much crap and mess up their dopamine response because this is the problem I have with I used to have this bit about cheesecake isn't cheesecake, it's cheese pie because nobody would eat cheese pie because that sounds disgusting, so we all live a lie. But the idea that you put raspberry drizzle on cheesecake and then your body goes, oh, cheese is coming down or raspberries are coming down, and then big lumps of cream cheese come down and the body's like, what the hell did you say? I thought we were getting raspberries. We prepped for raspberry and all this crap comes in. You cheat. Your body gets prepped for what's coming in and turns out to be wrong. It messes with your digestion, and a lot of times low salt, fake sugar and low fat things give the illusion, the mouth flavor that there's fat coming, and your body expects it, and then it doesn't get it, and it messes it up. I had a heart attack last December, and I've drastically changed my diet. No more dairy, red meat, red bread, pasta. Parts unknown, continuing with how. Just saying his last show a couple nights ago. I would love to do it, certainly. I can't stand cheesecake. Saturated fat supposedly isn't as bad as it's been made out to be. It's more like it passed through the body because of the saturation, making it harder to break down. Right. Before I got diabetes, I fasted for my faith once a year for 19 days. I went to eat oatmeal before sunrise every morning. Kept me going all day until sunset. Yeah. Try to use olive oil for fat. Right. Olive oil, or straight up butter, grass-fed butter. And the irony that if you're going to eat meat, it's better to eat the fatty cuts of meat than the and stay away from carbohydrates at the same time. It's interesting because they did a study about people who had a high fat diet or a no fat diet did great. Anybody with a moderate one where they were trying to mitigate it, which is what most people do when they cheat, they do it I gotta be on a no fat diet, and then but I really want this, but the vacillation keeps you in the middle, and the middle is what kills you. Sounds like you're describing why artificial sweetener is supposedly just as bad as regular sugar. Body expects sugar but doesn't get it. That's exactly right. Sugar's you just train yourself. How do you feel about coffee? I drink black coffee. Cut out preservatives. They'll kill you. Try real food. That's right. I drink black coffee. Don't put sweetener in it. Occasionally, if I want, I'll have a caramel macchiato from Starbucks and stuff, but within my eating window, which is a very short time, and only if I'm deficiting in calories and I need just kind of extra calories added. So I'll have whole milk with it, and I'll have as it is. Grass-fed butter is what they use in a butter coffee. Yeah, for ketone, the bulletproof coffee, right? Just don't eat carbs or drinking it or counteracts the ketones. That's exactly right. Most people do both. That's the problem, is that they chase their fat with carbohydrates. Milkshake for sorry. No, because it's hot. Been off Starbucks this month. The two biggest things that have helped me that I can narrow down, besides moving to one meal a day, which has certainly helped because you can't avoid some level of calorie restriction simply because your body won't tolerate that volume of food. But what really kind of stood out to me is I simply just did that 60% sugar cut probably did more for anything, because a lot of people, when you tell them you need to cut out sugar, they're like, but sugar's in everything, and so they use it as an excuse not to get sugar out of anything. And what the trick is, cut all the sugar that is there. Don't eat the pie, don't eat the cake, don't eat the ice cream, and 60% of the time. The other 40% of the time, have it. But cut it, don't have dessert all the time. Don't treat yourself constantly. You're too comfortable with that food. Don't comfort yourself with that, because you're killing yourself. So just drop it. Just go, okay, I'm not going to have it this time. This is one of the times anytime you can pass. Yeah, cut any added sugar. And then eventually you can boil down to, okay, I used to eat this oatmeal, but I'm eating a different oatmeal because it has too much sugar in it. It's just like, yeah, just drop it. And anytime you can, and the problem with artificial sweeteners, it just still cultivates the sweet tooth. If you can start cultivating, I love plain tea, always have, hence the joke. But yeah, exactly, Billy. But in drinking that over time, I've cultivated the flavor of tea, and I really like it. And if you add sugar to it, I don't taste the tea anymore. And so the trick is just cut out all the sugar of. If sugar's in the bread you're eating, and sugar's in in the cheese and some of the in a pizza you're having occasionally, whatever, just let it slide for now. Just stop taking just stop consuming massive points of sugar. No candy bars, no hard candies. Just drop it. Just don't do it. Yeah, thank you, Zelda. Magina cup. Yeah, chili's very good for OMAD. That's true. Like you're growing up drinking diet soda, regular Coke, and Pepsi are much too sweet. Yeah. I tried pink salt. Pink salt in coffee. Is that what you're saying? Sugar killed my grandparents. They were addicted to snacky cakes. English tea with lemon every morning. Yep. For real, 8 bucks. Yeah. Wow. Use honey on my tea. Honey's terrific. It's just it will produce an insulin response. So if you're trying to fast, it will break it. But having it when you're not fasting is terrific. It's got all sorts of positive aspects to it. Not the least of which is, that it has antibiotic properties. What's the point of butter in coffee? Having the fat in the coffee trains your body to burn fat as for energy instead of carbohydrates to make glucose. And what you eventually want to do is get your body to burn fat instead of glucose or carbohydrates. I'm tired, excuse me. Himalayan pink sea salt has bits of Mount calories. That's good. I like agave much more than sugar. That's fine. I think the jury's out on whether it's any different ultimately. I only had one piece of candy on Halloween. That's a miracle. So yeah, so you guys have seen some of the pictures. I really feel like physically I'm coming into form. I just simply have to, I need a little more calories in my diet to make stuff happen. But specifically, what time do I get up in the morning? It changes because we're shooting at different times. But I usually get up around 6 or so these days. So ever since I started doing OMAD, I sleep like a baby, and I sleep for 8 hours, and then my eyes just pop open. It really did get rid of me, like kind of being, a little lazy in the morning. Now I set 2 alarms so I don't snooze. I just set 2 alarms. I said I wake up in bed so I can lay there and read for a little while and kind of have like 30 minutes to ease into my day, and then a point where I get it. OMAD is 1 meal a day, Mark. During your window, you can eat anything you want, but you don't tend to desire nonsense food. That's true. You got to make it count. It's got to be good calories. Still swear by 3 small meals a day. Real food, if it doesn't come out of the ground or is it natural, don't eat it. Fruit, veg, meat. Yeah. Then go to bed, young man. If you like strong tea, try Yorkshire tea. Yeah. So that's been the Americans are going to be destroyed by the junk food and fast food. Oh, you should see what's going on over here in China, Julie. Oh my God! Not only do they eat a lot of like sugar and cakes and sweets now like crazy because it's a sign of being well-to-do. Cancer is wiping out large swaths of the Chinese populace. But also, they have um, like the safety of their food is so suspect. That even if you were getting what like there's wealthier people who are like, I want grass-fed beef, I want free-range chicken. They hear about the power of organic stuff or whatever, but they get, you can't trust it because people are always trying to make a buck. Is everything in a vending machine over there? No, that's Japan. China has a lot of vending machines, but not like Japan does. Do Asians love to smoke? Yes, there's a lot of smoking going on here. I go back home and see the amount of obesity in the U.S. and I'm standing. Yeah, it's crazy. Intermittent fasting definitely changes the inside of your head about your food. Yeah, this is true. Like once you're able to fast. And again, most people ask me how to start the fasting kind of thing, and the best way I've seen it is just push your breakfast 2 hours. If you get up at 6 and you normally have breakfast about 8 or 7 or 8, push it 2 hours. Just start there. And then eventually, if you can just skip breakfast, go straight to lunch at 1 o'clock or so like that. And then have a relatively large dinner and just have those 2 meals, but have them within a window. And then outside that window, outside those 8 hours, don't consume any calories at all. And I mean at all. No, you can have black coffee, you can have plain tea, and you can have water. You can even have water with a little bit of salt in it. There's all sorts of, you can even have water with a little bit of apple cider vinegar in it, which is how some people do shots of them. I think it's nasty, but I like ice water with like a splash of apple cider vinegar, and it's really good for you. And that's all you have during that 16-hour window. And then when you hit that window the next day, you're really hungry. You eat something completely satisfying. You have another big satisfying meal, and then you just don't eat again. And your body eventually gets, your body gets used to that idea, and then you can start squeezing it shorter and shorter. You just make the window smaller. I was a personal physical trainer for 7 years and was trained to leave several small meals a day is better than one large meal. Fasting plays havoc on your body. It doesn't. It does not play havoc. I work out fasted almost every day, and I'm seeing more gains than I ever have. I usually break with 12 macadamia nuts. That works, yeah. People have really been pushing that apple cider vinegar, yeah. Bye, Amos. Take care of yourself. Thank you. What about popcorn and snack on no butter? No popcorn. No food at all. Nothing that will trigger an insulin response, which is especially anything. You just said you get hungry. Well, I'm saying during the when you first start doing it. When you first start intermittent fasting, you're used to eating 3 meals a day. So when you convert to eating just 2 meals a day, you're going to be hungry by the time that that lunch rolls around. You haven't had any food, and your body's used to eating it, and you'll really eat something substantial as opposed to grazing. Plus, hunger isn't something that grows evenly over time. It spikes and ebbs and flows all over the place. But the point is, you start with that window, and then you can eventually squeeze it where you're just not hungry. You know when your meal is coming, and your body's fine till then. I'm honestly amazed at how easy it is to do 1 meal a day. It was almost harder to start doing intermittent fasting, and I think it might have just been the psychological effect. Yeah, and then you have stuff to do. You get on with your life. Ooh, too much to do fasting. Have to feed the fam. Yeah. That's understandable, Julie. Bad for blood. I used to drink dill pickle juice. She swore it was good for her gallbladder. It's interesting. The studies on the volume of salt that people like low salt diets being really dangerous. Just basically the exact opposite of what we've been told. Intermittent fasting group on Facebook. That's first rule of fast. Don't know about Fast Club. Yeah, it's kind of true because unless you're into it, people will drink it to help with muscle cramping. That's right. Salt and magnesium are necessary. Minerals if you're fasting too. Have too much acid or something. Hunger feels awful for me. But that your body adapts. That's the thing. It's again how I have type 2 diabetes too. Could I do the 1 meal a day? Of course. Yeah. I would say start with normal fasting though, and start working your way towards it. A lot of people have done it. There's a dude on called Diabetes Aesthetics, I think, on YouTube, and his whole thing was like, basically, he said, he was type 1 diabetes, but he's got it under control, and he doesn't use insulin because he fasts and works out the way he does. So yeah, of course, we used to get salt tablets at work years ago. They're right. Your body's trainable, absolutely. So yeah, remember I was saying a while back that I was I'm working towards being able to deadlift 300 pounds. Now, technically speaking, right now I can do it. I can do it once, not multiple times. But when I started doing that, I was like, if you'd asked me, can you lift 300 pounds? Can you deadlift 300 pounds? The honest answer was no, because at that time I couldn't, but also by the time I'm able to do it, I won't be me anymore. I'll be me plus the ability to lift 225 and then 250 and then 275 and then 285 and 295, like that. You're a different person. Once you start shaping what you're doing, once you start shaping your discipline, you're not the same person. You just aren't. It's like reading a book. No man steps in the same river twice. Once you've read the book, you read it again. You're not you reading that book again. You're you plus the book reading the book again. You've added what's in it. Oh, hi, Eddie. Yeah. I could probably have 30 pounds. We'll start there. Anytime if they do, they die. Well, in this guy's case, it might be type 2. Maybe my mistake, but you can look into it. I'm not diabetic, so it's not something in my expertise. I deadlifted when I was in my 20s, never made to 400. I'm really tall. That's a big order. That's okay. Yeah, intermittent fasting is IF, and OMAD is 1 meal a day. There you go. Yeah, Mary, I haven't read Jen Stevens' book, but you can look up Kino Body. He talks a lot about intermittent fasting. There's tons of stuff on YouTube and all kinds of ways to do it. And yeah, there's lots of options. I just decided to do it, and it's made a huge difference. I wish I'd have known about it 15 years ago, honest to God. And even the 1 meal a day thing, I thought I would do it for like a couple of or 3 weeks, and it's become normal for me, and it helps immensely, like while I'm working, because I'm not going, okay, when's lunch, when do we have to do this, I gotta my energy will flag. It just doesn't flag. My energy just doesn't go down. It stays up the entire time. You're supposed to eat seaweed. Okay, good to know. I'm actually a certified diabetes educator. Fasting is definitely possible, but may require an adjustment of meds and insulin depending on what's taken and when. Yeah, great. Well, absolutely look into that. I'm living in a body that is not me. I'm back. Oh, hey, I watched my first 01 video today. Enjoy it. Oh, look at that. Thanks. Cool. Yeah, you stay. Yeah, Mary. The energy, the steadiness of the energy when you're not doing 3 meals a day is peculiar. I will have to say it was not something I was expecting, and what I was expecting was quite the opposite. There'd just be this moment. And there, quite frankly, isn't. Like, everybody on crew even is like, dude, how do you just keep going? Like, your energy does not go anywhere. And you're able to talk and continue to, I'm translating Chinese, and I'm, moving around, and we're picking shots and doing all this kind of stuff. Have you ever heard of anyone fasting with just water? Of course. It's called a water fast. There's 2 kinds. There's a dry water, well, there's dry fasts, too, which is a non-water fast, which is crazy. I'm thinking about doing one of those, like a 3-day dry fast. There's a hard dry fast, which means a soft dry fast, which means you could still shower and brush your teeth. And then there's a hard dry fast, which means you don't even touch water because it'll go through your skin. Hal, why don't you go to sleep? I feel bad, like we're messing with your brain. Thank you. And no, I just missed you guys, so it's good to talk to you guys. Thanks, Julie. Put salt water out to flush too many electrolytes. Yeah, just a touch of it. Himalayan sea salt, and some people do like bicarbonate of soda and like I think it's sodium chloride. You have to look it up. But there's like fasting drinks that have salts. Mostly it's like electrolytes. Basically it's Gatorade without the color and sweetener. Come home. Yeah, good idea. Okay, Julie. I don't want to make you guys feel bad. You guys are awesome. I'm gonna go to bed. I will more than likely, because the internet is better here, be able to do a little catch up stream. That would be really nice, and it seemed to work fairly well. But you guys are awesome, and I will see you quite soon. I think next week's show should be easier for me to do because the internet seems to be getting better as we go to each place. So yeah, wish me luck. But you guys are awesome, and I will see you again. Rest well. Okay, yeah, just talk about me after I've gone to sleep. All right, cheers. All right, take care, everybody. Bye.